Broadcasting live from Brooklyn, New York, Solutions Review is on location at MobileIron Live 2019. Brought to you by MobileIron.
We are here at MobileIron Live in Brooklyn, New York, 2019, and it is a real pleasure for me to have an old friend of mine join us. We both ended up at the same event, but we've known each other before there was mobility, many, many moons ago. Yeah. But he is also a partner of MobileIron and really has a keen insight into how the mid-market is implementing mobility management and also the challenges that they face. It's Paul Troisi from Troy Mobility. And thanks for coming by, bud.
Oh, it's great to be here, Doug. Glad to see you here.
It's pretty funny that we're both here.
Yeah.
But it's also really interesting because you and I have conversations like this all the time.
Yeah.
About how you're doing with implementing MobileIron for the mid-market. We're obviously covering the space. What are some of the problems, challenges that are facing these companies? You know, I think your sweet spot is really,
SMB, mid-market, right in that
500,
space.
1,000 devices, 500 devices, 1,500 devices.
A couple of thousand below, somewhere in that ballpark.
Some would call them small implementations, but really for those folks, those are real important challenges, complex environments. They might not have all the service capability internal, and they really look to a partner like you to be able to bring not only the technology to the table, but that expertise and service layer.
Sure.
How do you help them think about this?
Well, I think we initially start off with the true understanding that, the needs of the SMB and the mid-market are exactly the same needs that a larger enterprise has. A financial services firm or a bank is still going to be under regulatory compliances, no different than a small healthcare organization has to fall under HIPAA compliances. It's the same needs, just a different size organization. And you're right in the sense that, there's no implementation that is smaller or larger. They have the same exact problems from a security perspective, from a compliancy perspective. So our approach is really just breaking down and understanding where those needs lie, regardless of the size of the organization, and really map out a strategy of trying to find out the best platform and the best solution that fits not only their needs in the short term, but nobody wants to go through that process of ripping and replacing something after 12 or 18 months, but really trying to look at a long-term strategy and making sure that whatever platform is brought to the table, implemented, and deployed is something that's going to be there for a long term. Looking at least 3 years down the road and making sure that that technology is mapped to their infrastructure, their needs, their business needs, and really get people out of the mode of thinking about here and now, but thinking about what's coming down that line tomorrow.
Well, and it's interesting because a lot of the keynote messaging here, a lot of the analysts are talking about how even at the most sophisticated enterprise solution level, they really need to rethink down to the core everything that they've been doing because of the level of sophistication of attack that they're under, and the fact that the perimeter is just getting more and more vulnerable by the minute. And so when you're dealing with somebody who's really thinking about mobility for the first time and really implementing that security for the first time, you can help them get it right, actually maybe even faster than potentially a more complex environment.
No doubt, and these little things that we carry around with us on a fairly regular basis, we had an interesting conversation yesterday that really talked about this phone is never really more than 3 feet away from you at any one time. And, somebody can leave their computer at home, but, if you've left your phone at home, you're turning your rig around and you're going to get your phone.
I've done it many times.
And the messaging that we're hearing here at MobileIron, is really strong. It's really just a completely unified message around the fact that, we can take this device now and start to leverage this as your primary source of login and authentication. And, long gone are the days of a password. We're leveraging way too many systems, way too many cloud services, way too many applications for us to try and remember 10 or 12 passwords on a regular basis.
Well, and that's the advantage that some of the smaller implementations have is the level of sophistication they have access to through the cloud with all these cloud services, where they can actually bring in a lot of interesting applications, a lot of valuable technology at an economic scale for them to be able to become dangerous. And then they need that level of that higher level of protection.
They do. And again, going back to that same mentality that there's really no difference between a small or a mid-market organization compared to a large enterprise. They still have the same needs, they still have the same processes in place, and they're still bound by those same regulatory compliances. So being able to now simplify their life, because I think, as we've talked about in the past, the difference between the needs of a large enterprise versus the needs of an SMB is budget and resources, okay? The needs are exactly the same.
Well, and I think they've probably been slow to the party only for those very reasons, right? They've been putting it off, and they've been getting more sophisticated with their cloud services. And now they're coming to the table and saying, you know what, we actually are so sophisticated now that we really need to think about it. But truth be told, they don't really need a massive budget in order to get themselves tightened up.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the industry over the last 10 years has gone through a lot of changes, and there has been a lot of consolidation, especially in the UEM space. The nice thing about it is, within that consolidation, it's not necessarily driven pricing down, but it certainly has standardized the pricing to the point that there's very little fluctuations between the pricing between vendors as well. So really it now becomes a function of, A, can I get this implemented at a reasonable price in a reasonable time frame? B, am I aligned with a technology partner that truly understands it? Can they handle it from a managed services perspective? Can they be an extension of my IT organization? With a keen eye on mobility and supporting the mobility enterprise and the infrastructure that's required around it. So, those are the things that we're seeing are the big differentiators. Platforms are the platforms. A majority of those platforms are going to do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're all sort of on that same wavelength.
Well, so one of the hesitancies might be that managed service piece, right? That they know they need the technology, they know they are vulnerable, but they don't know how they're going to service it when it starts to go wrong or breaks or something changes in their environment and they need to reconfigure. So,
Sure.
And that's where you come in, really, right? A company like Troy Mobility is really bringing that service layer to the table for that mid-market.
Yeah, no doubt. And for the past 9 years, the one thing that we've really done a great job of is not only the professional services side, so pre-sales and implementation and deployment, but really the second piece of that becomes that ongoing support and relationship with our customers. So, we've been very fortunate over the last 9 years to really only be dealing with about a 2% churn in our customer base, which is fantastic to the fact that we've built solid relationships with our customers, but most importantly, we're doing a great job supporting them. So if they have those hiccups, everybody has a hiccup. They've got a resource that they can reach out to, have a responsive engineer that's responding to the needs, and truth be told, being able to fix those on 1 or 2 phone calls very quickly really defines outstanding support in my mind.
Well, and that's really it, right? It's being able to have somebody at the other end of the line when you need that person to be there, and not necessarily have them on staff full time, because you don't need that all the time, because you are not as well funded or just as complex as some of the larger organizations.
Well, quite often, Doug, we really look at a model of saying, what is an affordable matrix to look at managed services? And oftentimes, depending on the size and the scope of managed services, we often say it's a fraction of an FTE. So if we can provide the same level of services by aggregating our team to support your organization, your mobile enterprise, for a fraction of the cost that it would cost for you to bring in somebody to be trained and now stay on staff and not necessarily be used on a full-time basis, now all of a sudden a managed services agreement makes a whole ton of sense.
Well, and I know you're at the MobileIron Live event because you've been with MobileIron for as long as you've been around, right?
9 years.
9 years.
9 years.
Outstanding. Well,
Yeah.
I've known you longer than that, so
Yes,
I got
we
that
have.
on them.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming by, buddy. Good to see you.
Great seeing you, too. Appreciate it,
Have
Doug.
a good rest of the show,
Thanks.
and maybe we'll see you somewhere else soon.
Outstanding. Thanks for the time.
All right, buddy.